How did a friendship? Forged in the brutal reality of Sachsenhausen concentration camp preserved the music of over 30 victims, ensuring their voices were not silenced by the Nazis. The answer lies in the extraordinary bond between a Polish political prisoner and a Jewish conductor, and a promise made in the shadow of the crematorium. By late 1942, Sachsenhausen had become a central cog in the SS machinery of terror. Located just 20 miles north of Berlin, it held over 20,000 prisoners behind its infamous gate with the cynical slogan, Arbeit macht frei. Among them were political prisoners, Jews and intellectuals from across occupied Europe. But within this universe of degradation, an unlikely form of resistance was taking root. Music was being composed, performed, and secretly preserved. And one man would dedicate the rest of his life to ensuring that when the war ended, the songs would not be forgotten. The man at the center of this story was Alexander Kulisiewicz, a Polish law student and journalist. Kulisiewicz was arrested by the Gestapo in October 1939 for his patriotic activities and transported to Sachsenhausen in one of the first mass transports of Polish intellectuals. He arrived at the camp as prisoner number 3415. Despite the horrors surrounding him, Kulisiewicz possessed a remarkable gift, a tenor voice of considerable quality and an insatiable passion for music. He soon discovered that Sachsenhausen, like many camps, had a surprising musical undercurrent. The SS permitted and sometimes even encouraged prisoner performances for their own amusement and to project an image of normalcy to the outside world. But for the prisoners, music served a far deeper purpose. It was a balm on wounded souls, a connection to the world they had lost, and most dangerously, a vehicle for defiance. It was in this environment that Kulisiewicz encountered a man who would change his life. Martin Rosenberg, known to his friends as Mordecai, was a Jewish conductor and composer from Krakow, a cultured and erudite man. Rosenberg understood the power of music not just as entertainment, but as testimony. He saw in the young Kulisiewicz not only a fellow Pole, but a kindred spirit, someone who understood that their cultural heritage was worth risking everything to preserve. By 1943, the two men had formed a clandestine partnership. Rosenberg, drawing on his encyclopedic knowledge of Jewish musical tradition, would compose new works and adapt existing ones. He would share these creations with Kulisiewicz, teaching him the melodies and the lyrics. Kulisiewicz, with his photographic memory, would commit them to heart. What made their collaboration so dangerous was the nature of the songs themselves. While the SS approved of prisoner choirs singing folk songs or German classics, Rosenberg's compositions were different. They drew on Jewish liturgical themes. They referenced the suffering of the prisoners. They mocked their captors with satirical lyrics hidden beneath innocuous melodies. As one survivor noted, although such critical songs made up only a small portion of the repertoire, their significance was extraordinarily large. They were the strongest form of protest available to men with no weapons and no power. The risk of discovery was constant. Performances had to be held in secret, often in the barracks after the evening roll call when SS guards were less likely to patrol. Kulisiewicz and Rosenberg relied on sympathetic prisoner functionaries to warn them of danger and on the occasional ignorance of guards who simply didn't understand the Polish or Yiddish lyrics, being sung right under their noses. Pause. Then came the summer of 1944. The Red Army was advancing from the east, and the SS began accelerating their murder operations. Transports of Jewish prisoners were being liquidated with increasing frequency. Martin Rosenberg, as a Jewish intellectual, knew his time was running out. One evening, Rosenberg called Kulisiewicz to a corner of the barracks. The camp was quiet, but the air was thick with tension. Rosenberg spoke in barely a whisper. He told his young friend that he expected to be taken away at any moment. He would not survive the war, but his music could survive if someone carried it forward. Rosenberg then recited a litany of compositions, songs he had written in the camp, traditional melodies he had adapted, and the names of fellow prisoners whose musical legacies deserved to be remembered. He made Kulisiewicz swear that if he survived, he would track down these songs, learn them all, and ensure the world heard them. It was a sacred duty, passed from a man who knew he was condemned to a man who might yet be saved. Shortly after that conversation, as predicted, Martin Rosenberg was loaded onto a transport. He was murdered by the Nazis, one of the 6 million whose names would have been lost to history but for the promise made in that barracks. Kulesiewicz was now a man possessed of a mission. He began actively collecting songs from other prisoners, Poles, Jews, Germans, Spaniards, anyone who had composed or remembered music from their captivity. He memorized lyrics about hunger and brutality, songs of longing for home, and biting parodies of the SS. He became, in effect, a one-man archive, his mind the only safe repository for this forbidden art. Then came the evacuation. In the spring of 1945, with the Soviet army closing in, the SS forced thousands of prisoners on death marches toward the Baltic coast. Kulesiewicz was among them. For days, starving and exhausted, he marched through the frozen German countryside. But he carried with him something the SS could never take: the music of over 30 fellow prisoners, including the entire legacy of Martin Rosenberg. He survived. Liberated by American forces in early May 1945, Kulesiewicz weighed barely 80 pounds. But his first act as a free man was not to rest or to seek comfort. It was to begin fulfilling his promise. For the next 37 years, Alexander Kulesiewicz dedicated his life to the music of Sachsenhausen. He tracked down other survivors, asking them to sing the songs they remembered. He transcribed melodies, wrote down lyrics, and recorded thousands of songs on primitive reel-to-reel tape recorders. He amassed a collection of over 500 compositions, creating what is now recognized as one of the most important archives of Holocaust-era music in the world. He performed these songs in concerts across Europe, ensuring that the voices of the dead were heard again. His collection was eventually acquired by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, where it remains a vital resource for historians and musicians. Kulesiewicz never forgot Martin Rosenberg. He published Rosenberg's songs, documented his life, and ensured that the conductor's name would not be erased. The friendship that began in the barracks of Sachsenhausen, forged in suffering and sealed with a promise, saved the musical heritage of over 30 victims and countless more whose names might otherwise have been forgotten. Pause. Kulesiewicz himself passed away in 1982, but his work endures, thanks to his extraordinary memory and his unwavering commitment to a dying. Friends' last request: we can still hear the songs that gave prisoners the strength to survive one more day.